Hello, my name is Mindy Doherty Griffiths, and I am the Programs and Tom Hendry Awards Manager for Playwrights Guild of Canada. And I'm joined today by Marty Chan. Marty has worked in theater, television, radio, and publishing for 40 years. He's best known for his cross-cultural comedy, Mom, Dad, I'm Living with a White Girl, and his immersive thriller, The Bone House. He works and lives in Edmonton with his stage manager, wife Michelle, and their two cats. Marty is PGC's featured playwright of the month for May 2026 and agreed to join me for a virtual chat today.
Hi, Mindy. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Let's begin. Tell us how you got your start writing plays.
Uh, so my origin story. So I actually started working for an entertainment company that produced live interactive murder mysteries. These were plays that were not performed in theaters. They were actually performed in restaurants. And of course, they were mysteries. And the audience would come in and they would basically sit down in a restaurant. They'd order dinner. And while they were waiting for their appetizer, actors playing characters would show up and whisper rumors about the other characters. There was always an obnoxious fellow who came in and made enemies with everybody in the restaurant. And the evening would go on until around dessert. And around dessert, the obnoxious fellow would start to keel over and choke and fall to the ground dead. And the detective would show up, cordon off the restaurant, invite the guests to get out of their seats, search the restaurant for clues, interrogate the suspects. And at the end of the evening, the players would guess who committed the murder, how they committed it, and why they did it. And then the detective would perform or deliver the denouement, the solution to the mystery. I was the head writer for that entertainment company, and I wrote, for about a year, a new murder mystery every week. So around 50 to 55 mysteries. And they were partly scripted, partly improv plays, but it sort of whet my appetite for getting into theater. And I went to university, got a major in English, minor in drama, so I could take some courses in directing and acting. And then, like every other playwright, I sent my work out and got rejected by pretty much every theater company out there, and decided that, well, if nobody wants to produce my work, I'll produce them myself. And I got involved with the Edmonton Fringe Festival and started producing my own plays until main stage artistic directors started to sit up and take notice.
Wow. Well, what challenges did you face as an emerging Chinese Canadian playwright, and how did you get your first production after the fringe?
Well, one of the challenges I found as a Chinese Canadian playwright is basically perception. Right, there's a certain bias that people have when they see my last name or they see the complexion of my skin. They just assume that the only kind of story I'm capable of telling is one that has something to do with my Chinese heritage. Now, the reality is, even though I'm a child of immigrants, I'm like a lot of other children of immigrants where my experience is not fully rooted in Chinese culture. It's rooted in the upbringing that I had in North America. So uh, to be sort of labeled as the expert on Chinese culture is a little tough because, number one, I remember years and years ago, Adrienne Clarkson was delivering a keynote at an arts conference, and she was talking about cultural diversity and how arts organizations treat it. And she referred to it as a one night stand, where once the arts organization, has the dalliance with a particular culture, they can move on to the next one, right? They've checked their box and said, okay, well, we don't have to do anything that's Chinese Canadian related. Now we can move on to another culture. And unfortunately, that doesn't build your culturally diverse artists, right? You only get one shot at one company, and then you have to wait like 10, 15 years before they go, okay, we're going to come back around to you now. There's no way that you can build any kind of career. So the way around this was really like coming back to the Fringe Festival. I made a conscious effort to write plays that had nothing to do with my Chinese heritage for the first 4 or 5 years, so that I could demonstrate to people that I could actually write a play and that people actually want to watch the plays that I put on. And it was then that the artistic director started approaching me and saying, oh yeah, we like the way you're telling stories. We'd like you to, we'd like to commission you for a play. And the first play that I was commissioned to write was actually a political murder mystery satire called The Old Boys Club, and Workshop West had commissioned me to do that. It was produced in Edmonton, and it did fairly well, and I was able to sort of establish myself as somebody who could write stories as opposed to the Chinese Canadian who wrote Chinese Canadian stories. And I think for me that was an important distinction to make, because it helped me turn that one production into, now I'm dating myself, a 40-year career as a playwright and author.
What is a piece of advice you would offer your younger self?
An advice that I would give my younger self, I would say, don't be too quick to please everyone. I think one of the dangers that we all run into as beginning playwrights is that we kind of think that everybody else knows more than we do, the director, the dramaturg, the actors. And so when you're workshopping your play and an actor comes up with, a question, or your dramaturg gives you notes, or a director says, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you did this? If you're not very secure in what your story is, there is a tendency for you to go rewrite the entire play on the basis of one person's stray comment. And over the years, I've learned to relax a little bit and go, oh, I know what that question is applying to. It's applying specifically to this character in this moment. It's not talking about the entire premise of the play. So let me see if I can address that. Or when I get a comment like, wouldn't it be cool if you did this? I would always sort of measure that and go, I know what my story is, and that note is going to make it somebody else's story. So I would tell myself, just don't be so quick to please everybody else. Try to make sure that you stand up for your story, because if you don't, nobody else will.
One of the modes of storytelling that you use is virtual reality. How did you learn to work with this technology, and what do you hope to achieve with it?
Well, with virtual technology, I mean, of course, this came out of the pandemic where everybody had no choice but to use Zoom meetings or Google Meet or MS Team meetings to connect with people. But what I found was that it is a form of storytelling that you have. You just have to be familiar enough with it in terms of what you do with the camera and what you do with technology to connect your audience. And so what I've been doing, and this is primarily as my side hustle as a kids author, I've been using this sort of virtual presentation to find different ways to engage the audience. And to me, that's one of the thrills of being somebody who comes from theater, is that I always think about the relationship that you have with the audience. How do you bring them into your story? How do you connect them? How do you challenge them? And with virtual, I'm trying to find a way to be able to connect with an audience, even though I'm not in the same room with them, and how they see, what unfolds in terms of my storytelling. How can I create things that are different, right? Something that will keep them on their toes. Right now, we're kind of used to the talking head, but I can sometimes, take you to the edge of the universe like this, and then take you all the way back. So I've introduced different camera angles in order to sort of pull things off. And a big part of this came from my interest, I think probably from that entertainment company that I did improvised murder mysteries for, is that I wanted to change up the relationship that playwrights have with the audience. And when you talked about earlier in the introduction, my play, The Bone House, was definitely an immersive play where on the surface, it appeared to be a lecture about a hunt for a serial killer. But as the lecture went on, people started thinking that maybe the person who's delivering the lecture is not the hunter, but the serial killer himself. And he's brought everyone together to brag about who he's done. Now, the play climaxes with a blackout where the entire audience is plunged into the dark and the real killer shows up. And in the dark, he proceeds to kill the hunter. But the audience doesn't see anything. They just hear noises. They feel people touch them in the dark, and their imagination goes wild. And I remember when I did that play, people who like traditional theater hated it, because they were like, no, 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 we like the fourth wall. We like the fourth wall. And you've torn it down, and now we're supposed to be complicit in everything that's going on. However, there's a new generation of theater goers who are like, oh man, I love this idea of being pulled into this world and that the fourth wall is completely wiped out. And so for me, like the example of the Bone House was a way to sort of shake up the relationship that we have with the audience. And to me, virtual is another opportunity to shake up the way that we connect with our virtual audience. We don't necessarily have to be in the same room with them. We just have to find different ways to engage them.
You've written for television and radio as well as theater, and your work explores genres like comedy and thriller. How do you decide how you will tell a story? And do you gravitate towards a particular style?
I like to sort of pivot between writing comedies and thrillers and mysteries. And for me, the skill set is the same because in both cases, the stakes are high. It's just that in a thriller, the stakes are physical stakes. And with a comedy, they're more emotional stakes. But in both cases, those genres really play with high stakes moments and situations. And and for me, I love the idea of always putting my characters in some kind of jeopardy. I think this sort of goes back to sort of the playwriting course where my instructor said, "Get your characters in as much trouble as possible." And when I did, he said, "No, you're being too Canadian. The conflict's not strong enough." And so I always thought about how to get my characters in the most trouble possible. With a thriller, obviously their life is in jeopardy, but in the case of a comedy, it's their ego and self-esteem that's put on the line. So for me, I enjoy writing both, and it's just nice to be able to swap back and forth. One is darker, obviously, and the other one is lighter in terms of the outcome.
What are you working on next?
Right now, actually, I'm quite excited. I've got a new middle grade novel coming out called Race to the Vault, which is hopefully going to be the spark for an idea that I have for theater for young people that's virtual, where the kids are actually going to be doing sort of a fan fiction version of the novel. The novel is about a group of kids who are on a hunt for a secret vault that has been hidden someplace in the world, and they have to locate it and open it by cracking different codes and solving different puzzles. And I'm building a virtual experience connected to that where students can actually pretend to be those kids, and they'll face a series of their own puzzles and challenges that they'll have to solve in order to locate their version of the secret vault. So it's a way for me to bring together my two loves, one being theater and the other one is writing books for kids. And hopefully that will be something that people will be able to experience, hopefully in 2027.
Wonderful. That sounds really exciting. Do you have any favorite Canadian plays, Marty, or are there any artists that are currently inspiring you?
I know I'm a big fan of playwrights who use sort of storytelling as a mode. So right over here, big fan of Daniel McIver and T.J. Daw. I also like playwrights who play around with that audience relationship. And so Rebecca Northan with Blind Date and some of the mystery plays that she came up with, where she actually brings an audience member up and makes them a part of the play and builds the story around them. I think that's really exciting. And of course, I see other people taking on something like that. Matt Barham and Naomi Snikes, who've come up with big stuff, which is I think people refer to it as the Canadian version of Every Brilliant Thing, which I think it's moving, it's touching, and it brings the audience in. So I think those kinds of creators are the ones that excite me the most, where you find a different way to connect to the audience.
Well, thank you for sharing your work and experience with us, Marty. You can keep up with Marty on his website, martychan.com, and you can find his plays such as The Bone House and Maggie's Last Dance at PGC's online bookstore, the Canadian Play Outlet, at canadianplayoutlets.com. Thank you so much, Marty. It was really lovely speaking with you today.